Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the charts when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Bitcoin rainbow chart, the current price action of Bitcoin, and seeing where we are at and what we can possibly expect in the near future. So let's start off with crypto fear and greed. And right now, we are in fear. So this is the time to look out for possible opportunities in the crypto market. And we'll get more into that later in the video. As you can see, we have been in this downtrend of lower lows, lower highs for a while, but I am wondering if maybe that downtrend has stopped, and we are seeing higher lows for now, but we still need to see higher highs, which if we did make, that would be a pretty big move. So just something to keep an eye on. Right now, this is still bearish as far as the fear and greed chart is concerned. As far as the alt season index, we just have a higher low. Hopefully this holds, but typically when we have these spikes, that's when alts tend to do pretty well. So going over to the rainbow chart right now, we are just at the upper end of this accumulate phase, still in one of the lower buying zones. And should we get in the short term towards the bottom of that accumulate phase, that's that third box from the bottom, you can see the price would put us somewhere between 47 and 61K. And in my opinion, that's not that bad. So even if there was further downside to go, that would be something to target. I'd say, that 47K number, it's pretty close to what I believe would be the absolute bottom this cycle. Should we get very bearish here shortly, but again, we'll wait and see what happens. So going over to Bitcoin, and let's go over it. Let's start with the RSI here in a second after we take a look at the price. So on the weekly, we are still red. We had this big 30% correction from the most recent top. And as you can see right there, 30% right in the middle. But Bitcoin has, since this bottom in late 22, we've had about a half dozen 20% corrections since that time. So we have 1, 2, 3. This was the Bitcoin ETF. That's 4. And then 5, 6. So we've had all these 20% corrections, give or take, and then we had this big 30% correction. Now, the good thing about it is this wick, it did go through the 786 fib, and that's a fib scale drawn from the prior high, prior low. But it went down to the 786 and the 50-week moving average, and the price came back up inside this descending channel, as you can see, with lower highs, lower lows. So we're still in this channel. Yes, it's still looking bearish, but typically after we get one big red candle, we do have another few weeks. And guys, this is why I use Heikin-Ashi candles to show us kind of a trend. But maybe this trend is weakening out and we can expect some possible upside here in the near future, I hope. As far as that rainbow chart, remember how I was talking about that 47K mark around the bottom of the accumulate zone? If that happens in the near future, that might be where this 100-week moving average comes up to. Now, I'm not saying that the price would stay there. Maybe it's just a big wick like here and the price stays at the 786 fib. But we do have all this price action as well. So if it came down to this and things got very bearish once again, this would be an area I think there might be great opportunities for long-term dollar cost averaging. And going back over to 2019, there's been a couple similarities. You see this orange vertical line, that's when rate cuts took place, which was near the top of what I call the mid-cycle top. We had the rate cuts, and all these red circles, by the way, are 30% drawdowns, just like the one we just got. Now, he didn't include the COVID drawdown because that was a black swan event. So I do wonder if without COVID, we would ever have gotten to the 200-week moving average. And let's just, for the sake of this argument, pretend that we didn't have a black swan event. We didn't have COVID. Well, that 100-week moving average, that light blue line I showed you before, that would be around 47K, is where Bitcoin bottoms. So you can see it had a big 30% sell off to the 50, moved up a bit, and then sold off again. So if we get another flush move like this, something to go along with rate cuts, which is kind of the current narrative going on, when rate cuts are going to happen, possibly in in September. We'll see. As far as the degree of rate cuts, that's something else to watch for. If they're cutting rates by 50 basis points or more, that's going to be very bearish for the next year or so, in my opinion. But if they're only cutting by 25 basis points, I think we do have a chance to possibly see a euphoric bull run blow off top, as we have before. Something else to note, Bitcoin, we are getting into this wedge formation. We have lower highs, higher lows. And as this comes to a head, we'll see if the price is going to burst out to the upper end, somewhere around the 50-day moving average here, around 61.5, or the 100-day moving average around 62.2, give or take. So if it breaks down lower, obviously we have the lower end of the channel, the 50-week moving average on the other time frame, and the 786. So we're talking about 50K, 54K areas such as that. I wanted to throw on a couple indicators here for you guys. Take a look at some possible bullish and bearish sentiment. Right here, you can see we have lower price and we have higher lows in the RSI. That's what's known as bullish divergence. So sometimes the divergence, whether bullish or bearish, can take a while to play out. So that's something to consider. But right there, we do have some bullish divergence. So maybe this move is going to break us to the upside before we cycle back down and keep just chopping around. Wouldn't that suck? But going over to the weekly, our RSI is still going down quite a bit. So is it bottoming? Hard to tell. But, you know, even back in 2019, when we had those big sell-offs, again, if we exclude this COVID sell-off right here, this might be something to look for, that the RSI gets around that 40 level when it ultimately bottoms. So some reasons to be bullish maybe in the short term after we finish this wedge, as well as the daily RSI, bullish divergence. But right now, there's no denying we are going down, and right now the market's a bit negative too. I wanted to show you something else. This is the stochastic RSI. It's another indicator I use, and it's useful for dollar cost averaging. Now, I use buy-sell signal indicators as well. I've talked about those a lot on my channel. This one's kind of a leading indicator, the 1020 MA crossover. This one's more of a lagging confirming indicator, UT bot alerts. I like using this in a bear market, like an extreme bear market, so you don't get faked out. You have confirmation to the upside on larger time frames, of course. But for right now, let's take a look at the stochastic. And if you're dollar cost averaging in when the stochastic flips positive, and we're talking about the blue flipping above the orange, you could argue, okay, maybe that's going to happen soon. And other times that has happened, right here, that was a good time to get in. Stochastic right here, good time to get in. Obviously right here, good time to get in. Let's go back to 2019 and see what was going on there. You can see the stochastic was bottoming, and you know, whether you got in here or here, and guys, yes, the price was lower. There is no silver bullet indicator to say that it's going to work 100% of the time, all the time. You know, it's just going to give you an infinite money glitch. So what we're trying to do is reduce the risk and play the odds. And overall, this isn't a bad way to dollar cost average. Obviously, not financial advice, but something to watch for is as we flip positive, if we are having something similar like we did in 2019, and I think we kind of are with the rate cut narrative and the 30% sell-off, even coming down to these moving averages, then maybe we're getting some of the best value we possibly can should we get another bull run, whether it's 6 months from now or a year from now. And we'll take a look at that on the Bitcoin rainbow chart here in a minute. But something to watch for is when the stochastic flips. And I've seen some people talk about this on Twitter, now X, how on the monthly this is very bearish, that when you look at the stochastic, it's falling. Oh my God, you know, get out of crypto. I disagree. And if you guys look, when the stochastic's fallen before, we still had tops come later. Okay, 2016, 2017, when the stochastic was falling, albeit it only got to the high 70s range. Look at how much, if you would have gotten out when the stochastic went down, you would have missed on all this. And so, yes, eventually it did sell off. Even 2019, yes, it went down for a little bit. It got just a little under the 50 line, around the high 30s, 40s. We still eventually went up. So, yes, we hit the oversold area or the overbought area of the stochastic. But whether this is 2017, 2019, or even a little deeper, I still think the top is eventually coming. So, a couple reasons for that. One, Bitcoin dominance. Okay, we've talked about this. This is kind of a good way to look at it, actually. From the top of 2017, we smacked into this dominance line. And for those of you who don't know, what this means is 57% of all money that's in crypto is in Bitcoin. That's what Bitcoin dominance means. The reason this is important is that when it tanks, like it did here in April of 21 and here at the end of 2017, when it tanks to the low 40%, that's the last two times when altcoins have exploded. And we also have this trend line right here as well. And you can see Bitcoin dominance is still climbing. It's still running into it. So until Bitcoin dominance finishes climbing and tanks, I'm not bearish on the overall crypto market. So I am looking for altcoins that have good value with some of these indicators I'm telling you guys about, and seeing, okay, where's their value? You can see here also, look at the stochastic. It's flipping right there for dominance. So we'll see how far down it goes. I'm going to take off the stochastic just for the rest of the video. But right now, the Bitcoin dominance, you can see it's honoring what moving average. When we use moving averages, you want to see which ones is it honoring the most. And that's the 20-week moving average. It's still climbing off it. So yes, we could get bearish. Maybe alts pump up a little bit in the short term. But unless we break under the 20, I'm not too concerned. Now you can see here, it broke under the 20 this time, hit the 200 as it was climbing above that heavy resistance line, and then boom, shot off again. So I still think kind of my target area for Bitcoin dominance is somewhere in between here, okay? So let's go back over to the Bitcoin rainbow chart. I talked about, what if we top 6 months from now or a year from now, 4-year cycle, a couple of areas to look for later this year, where Bitcoin might be if you're following the rainbow chart here, even just from the green zone. I'm kind of eyeing in between here if it's by the end of the year, early January, close enough. We'd be looking at a price of 66 to 145K max. That's the range if it was in here. Now, as time goes on, and I think that creates a larger potential for Bitcoin to go to higher prices. I'm looking at these ranges right here. And a reason for that is each halving, we've gone up one of these zones. And the last number of times we've gone down these zones. You can see max bubble territory, this the second top zone, this one only got to here. So the next peak, in my opinion, is probably going to be within one of these three zones because we have this log scale regression. And again, log scale means we go up by factors of 10. So 100,000, 10,000, 100,000, so on. So, woo, let's just reset it here. Remember what I said about going up a zone each halving? Okay, each halving we've gone up a color zone. Okay, and then recently we've also gone down a zone. So should we get a 4-year cycle top? I'm thinking maybe somewhere around August next year. If we got somewhere around a 4-year cycle, I'd be looking at that 105K to 227K. And what's interesting about that is that if we go back to Bitcoin, a way to look for price targets, by the way, when you draw these fibs from the prior high to low, good for looking at prices in between. But when you take your fib off log scale, it's a great way to look at price targets. And those numbers we just talked about, remember what they are. Okay, if we top around August of next year, somewhere around a 4-year cycle, and I'm looking at the yellow to orange zone. So we have 105K with the yellow. You go up to the orange zone, look at the right, 228K. That price range, I know it's a big price range, by the way. That price range encapsulates these three main fib targets right here. The 1618 at around 100K And by the way, my fibs aren't absolutely perfect, so plus or minus 5K. The 2618 at 154K, 155, and the 3618 way up there at around 210K. So I think the longer this bull run or this cycle takes to play out, the more likely we'll get up here. Something important to note is that if we did hit the 2618 target, that would put Bitcoin's market cap around 3 trillion. And the reason I really like this target is because the top stocks in the world, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, they're around that 3 trillion mark. So I know my XRP video, it pissed off a lot of people, all these scammers and cult followers for XRP. Market cap does matter, and we can't just make up whatever number we want to suit our narrative. We have to look at what the rest of the market's doing, at least for right now. Yes, in another 10 years, market caps will be even higher. I know that. But in the medium term, within the next year and a half, we have to be realistic with our expectations. And right now, if the ceiling of market cap is going to be somewhere around 3 trillion, which again is around where our top stocks are, Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, then I think that's a decent price target for Bitcoin around 155K. Now, if we go into a euphoric bull run in the stocks, and I think that's very likely if we are also to have the crypto euphoric market, the stock euphoric market, I think we might, if that's to happen, we might see something kind of like we did in 1998. This is something I want to show you guys here for a second. So U.S. interest rates, I don't see really anyone talking about this. And back in 1998, the Fed cut rates, they leveled out, and then they raised rates again. And the markets went into just absolute euphoria. This was the dot-com bubble. By the way, 2008, when they cut rates, you guys know that was the great financial crisis. Okay. Obviously, we had rate cuts before COVID, and then recently they're holding again. So everyone, I remember this as a teenager, everyone knew the market was in a bubble, even back here. People are talking about the market knowing it's in a bubble right now, the AI bubble. So all because they cut rates, maybe things get bearish short term. Usually it's very bearish when they cut rates a lot. But if they just cut rates a little bit, here's a narrative to watch for. Let's say inflation's sticky and it's not quite going down. They're like, you know what? We're not going to cut anymore. We're going to pause, raise rates again. If this happens within the next year, that would time up with the 4-year cycle. That would time up with, some of these stocks going to the moon. And I don't know if we're going to get this, guys, or this. Take your pick. It's one or the other. Again, the rate of which they cut rates is big. When the Fed's cutting rates really big, really fast, that's a bad thing. And we're going to see pain in the markets sooner than later. So if they're cutting just slowly and then pausing again, I think that's bullish. But if they're cutting very fast, I think that's bearish. I'll flip my sentiment. And of course, I'll talk about that on this channel with you guys, but just something to keep an eye on. That's why the rate cuts matter. So going over to Bitcoin again, those are my possible price targets. Should we get something like that 4-year cycle, the Fed doing a 1998 rate cut style progression there. I had a good comment in, I think, last week's video. Someone wanted me to go over the Tether dominance, which I do in all these videos, I do believe. I'll do that here in a moment, as well as the pi cycle indicator. First, let's go over to Tether dominance. We talked about Bitcoin dominance. Tether dominance, we have to take off log scale, and let's get rid of the moving averages so we can see things clear. So Tether dominance, it runs into this trend line when we have local tops in the market. Here's the 2017 top. Here's the 2019 top. I have these all marked out. This was the top before the COVID dump. Okay, so again, 2017 top, 2019 mid-cycle top. This was the top before the COVID dump. We had our double top and then the most recent one. Okay, we had our double top and then the most recent one. And I'm just, for right now, calling this the pre-halving peak. There's a couple ways for us to look at this Tether dominance chart, in my opinion, whether the bull run's going to come sooner or later. And one, I like this 0.5 mark as kind of a line in the sand on if we get an early bull run, an early top. Maybe Bitcoin only gets to 100K and we top kind of by the end of this year or early next year. That is my early top scenario. That maybe we get one more push up to the 0.5 and Bitcoin dominance tanks, Tether dominance tanks. And again, if you guys don't know, Tether is a stable coin. It's always at around a value of $1. So if you're not wanting to lose value in your crypto, you convert it to Tether. And more people convert it to Tether in down markets because they don't want to lose the value of their crypto portfolio. Okay. So if we have an early bull run, I think something like this will play out. And right now, we're still very bullish. Let me put this back on auto. Okay. Higher highs, higher lows. And it looks like Tether wants to challenge this 382 fib level right here before the 0.5. Something to consider though. And by the way, I'm drawing this fib. You see this fib I drew here from the base of the 2019 mid-cycle top. And something to consider is Tether dominance made a new all-time high. And this went on till you see September of 2020 until we had the ultimate top, and this was alt season as well. So where was Bitcoin in September of 2020? Okay, Bitcoin in September of 2020, that was right before, okay, when Tether dominance peaked. That was the last base or chance to get in before we went to new all-time highs. Let's show it on the Bitcoin chart as well. Woo. Okay, September 2020, that's right here. That's when Tether dominance peaked, okay? Last bottom, chance to get in, okay? Now, obviously, Tether dominance was very low, okay? Hit that trend line back here. Here's a question I want to ask you guys. Was that a bad time to dollar cost average in? Could you have gotten better value, had a better plan, timed things better, looked at buy-sell signals, indicators, we talked about that before, 1020 MA crossover, ET bot alerts. I'll throw those on maybe before the end of the video. Sure, you could have done that, but if you were dollar cost averaging on alts back here, yes, they may have gone down a bit, but if you pick the right alts, by the time we get into here, alt season, it doesn't matter. Okay, so let me go back to Tether dominance. If we get something like we did back there where we make much greater highs, can you imagine? I think that would line up more with the 4-year cycle narrative, topping later next year if we do challenge these former peaks. So early top, I'm eyeing this. But if Tether dominance starts to get way up here or even higher, then I think you have to consider 4-year cycle territory. Now, is it going to be as extreme as what happened back here? I don't know. We'll wait and see. But I do think if Tether dominance is to get up here, you might see Bitcoin dominance not just get to 60%, but maybe even higher, somewhere around the 70% mark. Okay. So right now, this is my target range because Bitcoin dominance, let's fix this. As you can see, gets lower each time. Okay, more altcoins come out. But it all depends. We'll wait and see. We don't. Hindsight's always 20/20. Okay, so want to prepare for both scenarios. So either somewhere in here is our top, and we do continue to go down, or we get back up into this range of the high 60%. The other thing or comment that the gentleman posed, sorry, I forgot your name. You talked about the Bitcoin Pi cycle indicator. Okay, this is an important one to know. So in the past, this Pi cycle indicator has been pretty spot on. It's called highs and lows in the market. High, 2017, and low. Perfect. High, okay, yes, Bitcoin was high here. Here was alt season, okay, and low. And yes, it went lower. I'll always argue right here, this is where FTX, one of the largest crypto exchanges, collapsed, and Sam Bankman-Fried, all that stuff. So we had a black swan event at the bottom, okay? That's why my Fib, by the way, has this extra negative 0.09% and then positive as well. It's a catch fake out moves like that. Okay. And if we were to draw the bottom down to where it was over here, it caught this fake out perfectly. Okay. Now, are we going to trigger the pi cycle high once again? I don't know. And I wish I could give you a more definitive answer. Okay, something that, I mean, you see this with the Bitcoin rainbow chart. You know what this is. Log scale, factors of 10, regression. Okay, we have diminished returns. And that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean we can't make great money, as you can see. I mean, heck, we just stay in this accumulate zone and you hold to the next halving. You know, the accumulate zone's at 128, 164K. So your holdings would still go up. Okay, the point is, though, is that with log regression, we may not continue triggering these pi cycle highs and lows. Now you see these white and red lines, it's the moving averages that they have on here. When it smacks into it and then gets rejected, look at that. That was the mid-cycle top in 2019. We smacked into that white line, mid-cycle top, a lot like 2019, okay? Now, when we break through and above it, that's typically the end of or getting close to the end of the bull run. 2017, my God. I mean, look at this right here, though. Again, 2017, it smacked into it, went down and sideways a little bit, even twice. Smacked into it 3 times, down and sideways, okay? But this just kept crawling up till eventually getting that pi cycle top. So something to watch for. Again, we may not get this pi cycle high mark triggered where you know the exact moment to sell. I'm looking for Bitcoin dominance to tank to the low 40%. Oh my God, what's going on here? Oh, it's got this. Let's take this off for a moment. When Bitcoin dominance tanks to around 40%, that's when I'm looking to get out, take profits from my alts. But as far as Bitcoin, you know, with that pi cycle high and low indicator, let's throw that back on. Sorry, I got all these lines on here. I know it makes things look messy. Are we going to get another high signal? Maybe, maybe not. But if we do break above this white line sometime, you know, between start of next year and August, then maybe. And by the way, why is the start of next year in August so important to me? Well, the average from the making a new all-time high to the next cycle peak is 300 days. That puts us into this year. Again, we had the first time ever that we had a new all-time high right before the halving. Usually the new cycle all-time highs come after the halving, okay? But I don't know, maybe you consider the cycle high to be what takes place between the halvings. That would be another perspective. So between the halving lines, where's the top? That's your cycle high. Okay, where's the top? That's your cycle high. So are you going to call it here? That's an argument to be made. We're not going to get too much into it. But if you do consider this a new high, typically from the break of the former all-time high to the new peak is around 300 days, puts us end of this year. Take the average from the halving, that puts us in August. Okay, that's what that means right there. So if Bitcoin somewhere in here starts to break through this pi cycle line and just start to rip up, that's when you gotta be looking at possibly taking profits. You know, again, watch Bitcoin dominance chart too. So right now, it's good we're talking about this, guys, because we have to have a plan. Again, I use the stochastic RSI. I use a couple buy-sell signal indicators. Okay, right here it's on the weekly buy-sell. What if we put it on the monthly? Okay, how good has this been on the monthly? Well, it tells us when to sell. I will say, because I lived through this would have been too late to sell. You don't want to wait for the monthly here. You wanted to take profits around the pi cycle top, you know, if that triggers again. Just something, if we get above that white line, you know, throw it on every few days or so to see if you catch it. But on the weekly, man, you know, waiting for the weekly, even in, 21, this would have been better. Because right here, May 10th, that was, you see at the bottom, that was the time we really started going down. But yeah, 21. After a big move up like this, by the way, you see a massive doji like this that makes a new high. And doji means undecided. that's a good indicator to get out. But this sell signal indicator, this would have been too late as well. We started selling off right here. And look at that. We had another doji, undecided. So should we start to rip up and then we get these massive dojis right here? Yeah, dojis mean undecided. And if we're undecided at the top and don't have these bullish candles, then, maybe consider taking profits. Okay. So buy sell signal indicator, maybe not so great there. You'd probably have to take a look at fibs and, stochastic RSIs. But that's something we're going to be talking about in the future. Actually, it should be something we talk about later. I'll make a note is, when to sell tops. I'll write that down in my notes for next time. When to sell tops. Writing a note right now. Because that's an important thing. We can spend more time looking at that later. Anyways, we hit the coveted 30-minute mark, which is always the mark we hit. So we talked about our price targets. If we get something like a 4-year cycle, it hits those fibs. When we take this off log scale, 155K. Again, if we get into a euphoric market, I would not be surprised to see these hitting around 4 trillion. And then would I be shocked to see Bitcoin hitting that 2618 extension at around 2 trillion market cap? I would not. Okay, let me close out with that. Take this off log again. As far as right now, 3 trillion market cap, to me, that makes sense. Okay, if we hit this 3618 and we get that 1998 to 2000 .com bubble style euphoric market, I would not be surprised to see Bitcoin get to 4 or 5 trillion, whatever, because that would be happening with many of the top stocks too. It would get so stupid bullish if we got that high. Now, I don't think we're going to get another 2000 .com style market. That the P ratios would be insane. I don't know if the markets have the strength to pull something off like that. We'll see, though. Never say never. But if we did get any bit of a euphoric, blow off top finish to the AI bubble, then yes, I would be definitely looking at this as more of a possibility. Okay, right here, this is my most bullish case scenario. Here would be like early top and then just conservative top, but I could see this. Okay. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a wonderful Monday. Take care.